Welcome to Dear Diaspora, a podcast celebrating the African diaspora and the change makers, innovators, and entrepreneurs working to make our world a better one to live in. I'm your host, Ndulwa Koa. Let's get started. Welcome to season 3 of the show. I am so excited to be back with brand new episodes of Dear Diaspora. If you are a new listener, thank you so much for tuning in. I really hope you enjoy the content and the episodes. And be sure to follow the podcast on social media at Dear Diaspora for daily updates and inspirational content. So you've probably noticed that today's episode is out on a Tuesday and not a Sunday like I've been doing for the past year or so. I've been doing some work to grow Dear Diaspora's audience, and the numbers show that episodes released during the week usually perform better. So I'm switching things up a bit and seeing how things go. So there's been lots of conversation, especially this past year, about the importance of having multiple sources of income and not relying solely on your day job. So many of us are still dealing with the impact of the pandemic, and like me, you're probably thinking of the different ways you can supplement your income to ensure that you have some cushion should anything like this ever happen again. If so, you'll love today's episode with Terry Agioma, founder and CEO of Invest with Terry. Terry teaches you how to supplement your daily, weekly, or monthly income with trading so that you can live your best life. Terry began her professional career working in education and nonprofits, and when she started trading stocks 9 years ago, she initially saw it as an opportunity to simply supplement her income. She was so successful, though, with this side hustle that in 2017 she decided to quit her job, travel the world, and begin trading full-time. She now offers an online curriculum that shares her investing strategies with people all over the world. During the episode, we discuss her upbringing in Dallas, Texas, and her college experience at MIT, her switch from being an educator to trading stocks and traveling full-time, how you can learn how to trade, pick the right companies, and make consistent gains, her advice for young people who are interested in investing but aren't sure where to start, details about her trade and travel program, and what being a part of the African diaspora means to her. I am so excited for y'all to listen to this episode. You might want to take out a pen and pad or type in your notes. Terry shared so many great nuggets, and I hope that you all enjoy this episode. Alright, so before we get into the episode, I am so excited to share that there's now a way you can officially support the show. Dear Diaspora is now on Patreon. Patreon allows you to support your favorite content creators, and in exchange, you get exclusive content only available to you via the Patreon platform. I'll be putting out bonus episodes and video interviews on there, and you also get access to podcast merch and opportunities to become a part of the show by either becoming a guest contributor or a guest collaborator. I would love your support as I continue to grow the show, so please visit patreon.com/Dear Diaspora. That's patreon.com/Dear Diaspora, or check out the link in the show notes to learn more and become a patron today. Today's episode is brought to you by Certified Africa. If you are interested in returning to, investing in, or visiting the continent, Ghana is such a wonderful place to start. That's why I'm so happy to partner with Certified Africa, a company that specializes in unique travel experiences that connect Black travelers to movers and shakers on the African continent. This December, I'll be heading to Accra, Ghana for Certified Africa's New Year's Eve in the Motherland Beyond the Return experience, and I'd love for you to join us. There will be opportunities to network with entrepreneurs, meaningful cultural experiences, and much more. Check out the show notes for more information or visit DearDiasporaShow.com to learn more. Oh, and using discount code Dear Diaspora gets you 10% off the entire trip. Now, back to the show. Terry, thank you so much for being a guest on Dear Diaspora. I'm so excited to have you.
Thank you so much for having me. It's my pleasure.
Absolutely. Looking forward to just learning more about you and the incredible work that you're doing. So let's get started by just getting to know you a bit better. Where are you from, and what was your upbringing like?
Sure. So I'm from Texas, from Dallas, Texas, and I grew up in a single family household with my mom and grandmother. So there were three generations of us. And it was always awesome because like I loved my granny so much. And then my mom is awesome too. So it was just nice to be in a house with three generations. I feel like I grew up with a lot of wisdom because of that. My dad, we were in two different cities, so I still had a relationship with my dad, but he actually moved back to Nigeria when I was in high school. So, like, the only way that we would communicate was through like Facebook, and I'm like a bit older now, so when I was coming up in even in high school, we just had like AOL Messenger, so
Wow.
it wasn't as easy. Yeah, it wasn't as easy to try to just jump on WhatsApp or something and communicate. So it's definitely been it was a really great upbringing though. Like even though my mom like we didn't have a whole bunch, it was just like I said, it was just us. But I went through high school, did really well there, ended up getting like a full scholarship to MIT, and from MIT started working in different areas. So I did an internship on Wall Street, worked in consulting, but I do know that I had so many, like, there were so many programs that helped me in life. So I did inroads that helped me as as a minority child and low income, like, helped me get into internships. I did other programs that helped to just open up my life to what business was. So I definitely think my mom did a good job of just exposing me to a lot, even though we didn't have a lot ourselves.
I'd love to hear more about MIT and what that was like for you. What did you study while you were there?
I studied management, and I knew going into college because I had done another program. I'm talking about programs, but I had done a program called LEAD, and it was a program that took us to a business school and just exposed juniors in high school going into our senior year to the business world. And before that, I had wanted to be an architect. I love real estate. I had wanted to build subdivisions. But they took us to this business school, so I ended up going to Kellogg at Northwestern University in Chicago, and that was actually my first exposure to the stock market too. They took us to the Chicago Board of Exchange, and we got to see traders trading on the trading floor. So that just completely opened my world to wait, there's this whole other world of business. So I decided instead of being an engineer, I'm going to manage the engineers and I'm going to go into management. But at MIT, I actually had an amazing time. I love math and science. The reason why I decided to go to MIT is because I walked into a physics class and the teacher was up there. It's a huge room, huge lecture room, tons of students in there, and I'm in the background. And I'm like, I can do that. Like that's not that hard. So I decided to go to MIT because I felt like their physics class was easy. And
Wow.
and yeah. And we didn't have like a lot of minorities there. So I ended up being the president of the Office of Minority Education. I was the captain of the STEP team for the National Society of Black Engineers. I just had a ton of fun. I did a business plan competition in Abu Dhabi at MIT. I just took every opportunity to have fun while at MIT.
Wow. Wow. Oh my gosh. That's amazing. You wouldn't think that MIT would have a step team. Um, but that's so cool that you got to participate and really get involved on campus. And so walk us through like, you graduate and you start kind of getting exposed to, the stock market. What what did you do after, you first started to learn about it? Like, did you immediately start, trading and that sort of thing? Or could you just walk us through that journey a little bit?
Sure. So growing up, for some reason, I had this stigma that the stock market wasn't a good thing to do. And I think a lot of people still have that stigma. They think that it's gambling, they think that it's too risky. So they just kind of write it off as something that they don't want to do. Or if they do invest in the stock market, they think, well, the only way to do it is through my 401k, or I need to have some advisor, someone other than myself that will do it for me. So I actually went into my internship at Morgan Stanley with that same mindset. I had actually applied for a job in consulting and didn't get that one. And so my internship at Morgan Stanley was like the second runner up, right? And I think just my whole mindset changed when I got there. We did do a lot of numbers, and it was, as an intern, most of my job was more analysis and spreadsheets. So I didn't feel like, man, like this is the best thing in the world. But I saw that there were a lot of people making money in stocks. And so it definitely opened my mind to that this is possible. But it wasn't something like, to your question of, did I just immediately start investing for myself? No, because when you're first going into investment banking, they don't actually teach you how to invest for yourself. They're teaching you how to be an analyst, teaching you how to do work for their companies and how to make the bank money, right? Mm-hmm. So they didn't teach me how to individually do it for myself. It wasn't until way down the road, well, not way, I'm not that old, but it wasn't until years later into my career that I actually started investing for myself, and that was after the housing crash. So coming out of college, decided not to do banking. I went back to consulting, and one of our clients when I was in consulting was Teach for America. And so I decided, hey, I actually like this education realm. I like the idea of fighting for education equality. So I went on a 10-year career path of being in education. I worked for Teach for America's national department, helping to train teachers. Then I went and worked for an after-school program, helping kids in underserved communities in Chicago. But that's when I actually started trading on my own, because when the housing market crashed, I knew this is a good time to invest in stocks. And that's when I started trading on the side.
And I was going to ask this question later about just given our current environment and being in a pandemic, if that's kind of just changed how you teach and how you kind of trade stocks or invest. But I'd love to just maybe hear about the similarities between, when the housing market crashed and then now. Like, are you seeing anything similar, or is it two completely different situations?
Great question. Great question. So there are some similarities are that the market fell extremely fast. So in March of 2020, when we started having fears of coronavirus, the market fell about 30%, like super fast. And it came almost out of nowhere. Like no one was expecting the market to fall the way that it did. And I think that's very similar to how we felt when the housing market crashed. It felt like it came out of nowhere and it just crashed super fast. Right after the housing crash, though, we did have a little bit of a recovery. Stocks started coming back up, but then over the next few years, they continued to go down into a recession. That's something that many scholars and financial analysts are saying will happen as well with coronavirus, but we haven't seen it play out, where the stock market has risen over the last 3 months. It's had this V recovery almost back to, February highs. And many analysts are saying, well, that's great. It's done this recovery, and now we'll start going into a recession. So we'll have to see if it actually plays out that same way. A couple things that are not similar, though, is that when the housing market crashed, there was no liquidity in the market, in the financial banks. They were falling under. So for many people, investors that had stocks, some of them had a really hard time getting out of their positions because the bank didn't have the money to buy the positions back. One thing people should know is that investing, the stock market is really it's a negotiation between buyers and sellers, but the people who really are the market makers are big banks like Goldman Sachs, Morgan Stanley. So us at home, we're just in the game, but we're not really making moves. The ones that really are making the moves are the big players. The difference now, though, is that the banks do have liquidity. So the Federal Reserve has stepped in and said, you know what, we're not going to let what happened in the housing crash in 2010 happened again in 2020 because we're going to make sure that the banks have enough money. So that's one thing that's been very different. We've seen so many stimulus bills being passed, and the Federal Reserve are buying bonds, and now they're thinking about buying corporate bonds, which means like they'll shore up companies so that the companies don't go under. Like, that's different. So that's one of the reasons why we're seeing the stock market bounce back as much as we have, even though unemployment is higher than ever, even though the many businesses are falling apart. Like, all the movie theaters had no business for 2 months, like literally no business. The airlines companies, like, yes, they're coming back on, but they're still losing. American Airlines said they're losing like $50 million a month. And then they got super excited because now they're only losing $40 million a month. Like, that's still losing though, but their stocks are,
Right.
are running up. And the only reason why is because the Federal Reserve is backing the money. Like, they're giving more liquidity. So that's something that's different from last time to this time.
And so for someone who is, a young person and they're like, okay, I want to start, investing today. Like, what's the first step? Like, what do they do?
First step. So let me give you two different aspects to the first step. First step is you need to get educated on stocks. I very much think it's important to take a course. So one of the biggest reasons why I've started my trade and travel course is for the home gamer, for that person who just opened up a Robinhood account and was like, you know what, I think this is a good idea. I hear everybody saying we should invest. I have no idea what I'm doing, but I'm just going to buy something. So I think for that person who's already interested in investing but doesn't have any kind of trading plan, you need to take a course so that you can get a trading plan. That should include learning how to pick the right companies, learning how to protect yourself from losing, learning how to read charts so you know when to get it in and out of a trade, or learning how to even have a plan so that you can be consistent. Anybody can make a big win one time, but can you do that consistently 10 times in a row? So education and courses help with that. So I think educating yourself on how to trade is step number one. But then on a more practical tip of like steps, I think everybody should download CNBC to their cell phone. That's the financial TV show. Like, CNBC is the financial department of the NBC network. So if you wanted to know about companies or know about stocks, just listening to them on TV or downloading their app to your cell phone will immediately up your game on knowing how, like, what's happening with companies and being a better investor. So that's step number one. And I think that's really important, especially for a lot of us that are cord cutters, because, if we are using our Fire Stick, we may not be looking at live TV. So it's definitely more important for young people to download that app to your cell phone so you can get the latest news, because that's really going to impact your trades. So that's one step. And then I do have one more step, but I don't want to keep rambling on.
Oh, you're totally fine. But yeah, I mean, thank you so much for breaking that down. I think pointing out to something as simple as, download, the CNBC app and start to kind of listen to, that sort of news, I think is just super helpful, because a lot of times, we're just kind of drowned in so much content and you just don't know a good place for you to access that sort of content. I'd love to just go back a little bit to, when you first started teaching people how to, trade, while traveling. What sparked your interest in becoming a full-time entrepreneur and starting to teach people how to trade and invest?
So I've been an entrepreneur since I was in elementary school. I had a concession stand when I was in elementary school, and I would sell candy to different people. I've been in Mary Kay in college. So being an entrepreneur actually is not new to me. And that might be because my grandmother and mom also were entrepreneurs. Like, they had a cleaning business and just whatever they needed to do to keep food on the table. So I've been an entrepreneur for quite a while, but I did not think in my wildest dreams that I would ever be teaching other people how to trade stocks. Like, that just was not on my radar. And when I first decided to start trading and traveling, it literally was a very selfish thing just for me. I was so tired of being just like cooped up in one building every day. I wanted to travel the world. So I ended up going to like South Korea for a month, Vietnam for a month, Thailand for a month. I just was gone. And I was loving it. Like I loved it. It was just the only person I was accountable for was me. And when you trade stocks, like that's one thing that's good. I didn't have to worry about a boss. I could pick my own hours. I could do it from anywhere because you can trade from your cell phone. So literally when I started trading stocks and used that as the way to just provide for travel, I didn't need a lot of money. I just needed enough to like pay for my bills and pay for like my trips and good food when I was gone. And so that, like, although it sounds like a lot, but that's $300 a day, I can totally live off of that, right? So it purely was very selfish. However, when I was gone and traveling, I traveled with a group. It was called We Roam. I don't think they're around anymore, but it was a group of professionals that were traveling together. And I started getting all these people asking me out for like lunch and for coffee. Like, Terry, can I take you to coffee so you can tell me more about this investing thing? And can we go to lunch? And so eventually I was like, look, people, y'all are trying to ask me on all these coffee dates and I don't even like coffee. Let's just do a meeting and I'll teach you guys what I know about stocks. So we put together this class, and this first one was in Thailand. So there was a really cute office, like a co-working space in Thailand that we would go to. So I asked them like, hey, can I use one of the rooms, and we're just going to come together and I'm going to teach them about stocks. And they were like, sure, go ahead, take the room. So put together a PowerPoint. It was intro to the stock market, and I was just going to teach them like an intro. So not all, but several of the other people in our group, they came and they were like so excited, and I taught the class. And I actually had a ton of fun teaching the class. And they said they loved it too, so much so that they were like, okay, are we going to do this again next month? So we actually did it again the next month. And this time we were in Vietnam because we were traveling like a month at a time in different countries. So in Vietnam, we did the same thing. We found like a little WeWork space, and we said, okay, let's do the class. So I put on the class. And then this time I was pretty, like anything I do, I want to do the best. So now I was like, well, I taught them the intro. Now I want them to be good at it. So I'm going to make this class a little more difficult. So did that class. They loved it. And then some other people from the workspace had come, and they were like, so is this a series? And I'm thinking, no, like this is just supposed to be a one class thing. No. So I kind of put it on the back burner, came back to the U.S., and then I had several students, or not students, but several friends ask me, oh, by the way, we saw on Instagram that you did these classes. So when are you going to do a class for us? And I'm like, seriously? You guys want me to do a class? So told everyone that I would do a class here in Dallas, and ended up having like 71 people show up. And there were so many people from even other cities that were mad they couldn't come. We did an online version. And that's how it all got started. That's how we got started with the trade and travel program. And I started actually doing more classes and made it into a curriculum and an online course from that.
Oh my gosh, that is such an amazing story. For people who, are interested in learning more from you, could you walk us through the curriculum a little bit? Like, what do people learn when they sign up?
Sure. So the full course, the full VIP course is 8 weeks. It's an 8-week program, but you are able to do just half of it. So for some people, they were like, Terry, can I start with half of it and then upgrade to the full 8 weeks? Totally fine. So the whole thing is called the Trade and Travel VIP program. In the first 4 weeks, we start with my Invest with Terry method. So I have a 7-step framework that I use every single time I take a trade. And this is what allows me to be consistent. So those $300 a day gains have gone up to $1,000 a day to $10,000, and now I've made over $200,000 in a day, but using the same 7-step framework. So I start breaking it down to my students in like a very easy to understand way. And I talked about it a little bit before, but the first week we start with how to pick good companies, how to place a trade, and just kind of the basics of the stock market. So beginners, it's okay if you're a novice, you can take the class because we start from the beginning. Then we move on to risk management, how not to lose. And this is where my advanced traders who've been trading for a little while, they absolutely love this section because there are ways to protect yourself from losing. Even if you think about like there's order types that can get you out of a trade if the stock market goes down. There's formulas that you can use to calculate your quantity size. Like we talk through those type of basic things that nobody tells you but really help protect you from losing. Then we go into charts, and charts is looking at candlesticks to see what price should I get into this stock. I may know that I love Apple stock, but there's times to get into it that are better than others. So how do I know when's the right time? Looking at a chart will help with that. So we talk about charts. Then we put it all together into that 7-step strategy, and that's the first 4 classes. Like that's the first half. After that, though, we have the VIP program, the more advanced program, and the students are learning how do you make money when the market goes down. There are tons of traders that make billions of dollars when the market falls. So how do you make money on the way down? And those traders did extremely well during coronavirus. Like when the market was falling, they were like, Terry, I'm raining cash. And then we talk about gaps in Globex. So like, how do you take advantage of overnight trading? And then we take all of the things I've taught them and we amplify it with options trading. Because options is another asset class, but it's just like trading 100 shares of a stock at a time, and it takes less money. So it's actually pretty cool, but we go through options in the VIP program as well.
Oh my gosh.
I think once people learn all of that, they are super prepared to start making $1,000 in a day, which is our goal for our students. We're trying to help 1,000 people make $1,000 in a day, and we call it the $1 Million a Day Club. Because that's $1 million. If we get 1,000 people to make $1,000 a day, then we'd be generating $1 million a day in our community.
Wow. I mean, that's just so powerful. And I love that you are doing this. And so for people who are interested, is stock trading, is it like a long-term game, or is it like you do it for a little bit, make your money, and then you're out? Like, how much time should people commit to it?
Great question. So there's 2 different kind of forms of thought or groups of thought in investing. One is the long-term buy and hold Warren Buffett method, and then another is the short income driving method. And for me, I'm more of the active investor, income investor. So what does that mean? That means that I'm usually in a trade. One day would be a day trade. If you got into a stock and then got out of that same stock in one day, that's a day trade. Or I could be in a stock for a few days to a week or a couple weeks. That's a swing trade. When you're in a stock in one day and then you kind of let it go for a couple days or even a couple weeks. Anything less than a year would be considered short-term investing and active investing if you're holding a stock. So I think that that's the best way for me, but that's because I do use stocks to pay for my bills. So I use stocks to pay off my student loans. My student loan bill at one point was $17,000, and I said, you know what? If I can just pay $100 a day on that or $300 a day, I can pay that off pretty quickly. So I used investing for that. Or I wanted to do a trip to Greece. The trip to Greece was going to cost $3,500. Hey, $3,500, even if I just make $100 a day, I can pay that off in about a month or 2. The market's only open 5 days a week, the stock option for stocks and options. So you have to think about 5 days is 20 days a month that you can actually trade. But yeah, so in a couple months, I could pay for that. So I like trading stocks on like a daily, weekly, monthly basis to make income.
And so what would you say is the biggest lesson you've learned going from working, full-time to like kind of side hustling and then becoming a full-time entrepreneur? Like, what's that been like for you?
Biggest lessons that I have learned in my transition. I think one is I've learned how valuable my time is. For a long time, I figured that everybody has to have a job, and in any job, I'm going to just do my best at it. So I've never had a job where I didn't work like 60 hours a week. Even if the requirement was 40, I was still working from home. I was still always on the clock. And, we can take our laptops anywhere. So I'm working on the weekends, just trying to do my best. And I thought, like, hey, that's just what everybody does. Like, this is just what life is. You go to work and you try to do your best, and you just always are at work and always at the hand of a boss. What I have learned becoming an entrepreneur is that that's not true. There are ways to make money that free up your time, and it's really up to you to decide what your time is worth. Are you worth putting in extra time but becoming an entrepreneur, or putting in extra time as an investor to free up your time at work? Or are you worth just more than what people are giving you? And I know that sounds really like elusive and just out there, but I've learned that, like, in my last jobs and as an assistant principal, and before, I had bosses that like really put me through the ringer, and I would just keep trying to prove to them that I was worth it. Like, even if I had staff members that backstabbed me and tried to take over my role. I had the boss tell me something and then go in front of other people and say that she didn't say that and act like I'm stupid. Like, just like the craziest things would happen when I was at work, but I thought that I didn't have any other options. But investing has really shown me that, like, no, you have other options. There are other ways to make money, and you're worth it. You're worth living your best life. So I think that's probably it for me.
Wow. I mean, that's an amazing lesson. Definitely. And I'm glad that you've been able to kind of carve this path for yourself and find something that, you're passionate about, but then it also is able to sustain you and your lifestyle. So I know one of your goals with everything that you do is, helping individuals achieve financial freedom and build wealth. Could you speak a little bit more to that and like why that's so important?
Yes. So I think the best way to talk about it is in just a couple stories of my students. So I have one student, her name is Annette, and I love her story because when she first came to me and talked and joined my class, she had just experienced the death of someone in her family. Like, her sister had passed away, and she had to take on taking care of her nephews. And I remember her struggle at the time was, Terry, one, I don't have enough money to take care of 2 new kids. And then on the same time, I'm working so much. She was a registered nurse, and she had so many hours that she was working. She didn't have the ability to take care of them because she's working so much. And after working in my class, she started making that $1,000 a day. She actually had a $20,000 a day recently, but I remember like one email she sent me in the very beginning, and she had just made $2,600 in a day. And she was like, "Oh my God, Terry, do you know that this actually will allow me to not have to work some hours at work, and I can actually take my son to school now. All I wanted to do was be able to actually take him to school myself, but I had to work so much, I couldn't take off the time to get him to school. But now that I have this extra income, I have freedom. I can take him to school myself." And like that right there is what I love to see. Like, that's what I'm working for, to just give people the freedom to take their kid to school. Like, that's priceless. That is priceless time. And then, like, I have another student, his name is James, and James actually quit his job recently. He had been working in corporate America for 17 years, and he was able to quit his job and start trading stocks full time using my strategy. And what's amazing from him is he sent me a message recently, and he was just like, "Terry, I cannot imagine having to still go to work right now during coronavirus. I'm so thankful that you've taught me a skill where I could be home with my family during this time." And I was just like, wow, That's so true. Because in his line of work, he would have been essential. He would have still had to try to figure it out and go to work and figure, but no, he had figured out another stream of income that allowed him to have more quality time with his family and just be able to be at home when everybody else was home and even protect his health, right? So those kind of things are like what I do this for. I love being able to help people in that way.
That is incredible. Thank you so much for touching on that, because so many of us, are essential workers and we are on the front lines. So having this alternative way of earning an income, I think, is really important for us to know for sure. Wow. And so you've gotten to travel, while running this business. Could you share maybe some of your favorite travel experiences or just favorite places to visit?
Yes. One of my favorite travel experiences was in Thailand washing the elephants. So you're not supposed to ride elephants. And I didn't know that, but I learned it when I went there. So there's an elephant sanctuary where they're taking care of elephants because there's a lot of elephants that are, people are riding on them. And so they're getting frail. And so in this sanctuary, they take care of the elephants and kind of let them run wild. And there's this little gulf of water where we got to like bathe the elephants. And one of my favorite moments was I was bathing the elephant, and then all of a sudden he like sprays me with all this water, and I think he's just like, you know what, you're bathing me, I'm gonna bathe you too, like. So that was so fun, and that definitely was a really cool experience. I went to Japan. I went to Tokyo by myself. And I haven't done a solo trip. In college, I did a solo trip to Venice by myself in Italy. And now at 36, my birthday's coming up soon, so I'll be 36. I can't imagine like what I was thinking. I was just so fearless back then. But I did another solo trip to Tokyo, and I think that just I got on that plane so afraid because I was like, you know what? I don't know what to expect. I've never been there before, but I'm going to try it. And I just got so much confidence after doing that trip by myself. I was like, you know what? I can do this. Life is okay. And there are good people all around the world. So that was a great experience. I finally got to my dream place of Australia. That was really cool. And one of my friends came with me on that trip. So I had a lot of really great travel moments.
And I'd love to know like what your family thinks about just what you do. Are they like, wait, what do you do? Or do they have like a good understanding?
In the beginning, my mom was very much anti-entrepreneurship. So she was like, so how are you going to have insurance? You need insurance. You need insurance. What if you just work she's like, she wanted me to stay at the school because assistant principal is like a lot of people, that's what they're working towards. So it's like, you got that. Why do you want to leave? So she was like, well, you know that you can trade on the side. You don't have to do it full time. You could just stay at the school, and during the summers you can trade or travel. And I'm like, no, like I think I can really do this. But now she's definitely come around. Like now, like, I mean, if you were to see your daughter make $200,000 in a day, and that's literally like what we would have made in 5 years of working for somebody else. Like now she's just like, you know what? I'm so thankful that you stepped out on faith and did this, because like her fear would have really like stopped all of that from being realized. And she's talked to me about that. She's like, you know what? Like I was afraid, but you taught me how not to be afraid, how to just step out on faith and go for it.
Wow. That's so powerful. And where do you plan to go next once, the pandemic hopefully is gone or at least under control?
This year, I was supposed to be traveling a month, working a month, traveling a month. That was my goal coming into 2020. Clearly that did not happen. So I did make it to South Africa. I made it to Cape Town in February, and praise God for that, because right after that, everybody was in quarantine. So I wouldn't have been able to make it had we chose to go even just a month later. I still haven't been to Bali, so I would love to go there. I want to go to India. That's on my list too. And yeah, those are probably the top two right now, but there's so many places in the world that I still want to go.
Absolutely. Same here. And I can't wait. I hope to do some traveling maybe later in the year or early 2021. But I miss traveling for sure.
Yes.
And so I always end with this question. What does being a part of the African diaspora mean to you?
What does being a part of the African diaspora mean to me? Honestly, it means that I have this work ethic and this pride that is just part of my being. I feel like we're some of the hardest working people and the most creative people on earth. So just that legacy and that like innate spirit in our soul just means that we can rule the world. I think that's what it means to me, that we just have all the endless possibilities available to us.
Wow, that's beautiful. Thank you for that, Terry. And how can people get in touch with you, learn more about your course, and then just learn more about you in general?
The best place to go is tradeandtravel.com. If they go to tradeandtravel.com, they'll see a webinar that talks about like how to make $1,000 a day. So the top 4 things I think are important to make $1,000 in a day. I think that's the best place to start. Start with that webinar. You can go to tradeandtravel.com or itradeandtravel.com. And then you can also find me on Instagram at tradeandtravel as well.
Awesome. I'll be sure to include those links in the notes. And thank you so much, Terry. I've really enjoyed getting to know you a little bit better, and also just learning about all the incredible work you're doing to teach people how to invest and build wealth.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Today's episode is brought to you by Certified Africa. If you are interested in returning to, investing in, or visiting the continent, Ghana is such a wonderful place to start. That's why I'm so happy to partner with Certified Africa, a company that specializes in unique travel experiences that connect Black travelers to movers and shakers on the African continent. This December, I'll be heading to Accra, Ghana for Certified Africa's New Year's Eve in the Motherland Beyond the Return experience, and I'd love for you to join us. There will be opportunities to network with entrepreneurs, meaningful cultural experiences, and much more. Check out the show notes for more information or visit DearDiasporaShow.com to learn more. Oh, and using discount code DearDiaspora gets you 10% off the entire trip. Thanks for listening to Dear Diaspora. If you like what you hear, please rate the show and leave us a review. If you really like what you hear, become an official supporter of the show by visiting patreon.com/Dear Diaspora. Appreciate you tuning in, and we'll talk to you next week.